Hello, Sublation Media viewers and readers. It's me again, Douglas Lane, and in the last couple of weeks, I've been struggling to understand two approaches to dialectical thinking, and by extension, two approaches to the philosophy of Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. That is, I've been comparing the Hegel of Zizek to the Hegel of Adorno. This means that I've been comparing Adorno's theory of non-identity to Zizek's theory of the gap, or the parallax. In an effort to make these abstractions from critical theory concrete and fun, in order to make these series simple enough for idiots like myself to understand, in this video, I'll be turning to the absurdist science fiction film Everything, Everywhere, All at Once to provide some illustrations. And this video will focus on Adorno. To begin, I want to consider two key terms that are often brought up together, or used as synonyms, but that are in fact not only not identical to each other, but also are used in a variety of ways and that have multiple definitions or meanings in themselves. The notion of ideology contains many variations that are slightly askew or even at odds with each other. An ideology can be considered a mere description or explanation, a way to understand the world and how it works. Marxism, liberalism, Catholicism, and even astrology are all ideologies when the word is used in this way. When used as a pejorative, the term ideology indicates a set of false beliefs. From the point of view of a liberal, the Marxist would be a victim of ideology, and the opposite is also true. A third way to understand the term ideology is as a social fantasy that helps to maintain a given political or social system despite the system's failings, contradictions, or other inadequacies. You can be said to be living within an ideology when the world appears to function or when it seems practical, even though you can't fully understand how it works or justify what happens within it. For example, in the musical The Fiddler on the Roof, the tenets of Judaism are depicted as ideological because they are acted out within a community of believers. Judaism is ideological precisely when, as the song says, it directs people on how to sleep, how to eat, how to work, and how to wear clothes. By providing a set of activities that stabilizes the community, allowing it to reproduce itself over time, Judaism functions as an ideology. It is in this third sense that some shared territory arises between the term ideology and the term reification. Something is said to be reified when it is materialized or put into productive practice. That is, a set of instructions on how to repair a motorcycle might be reified, made concrete or real, when they are used to repair a motorcycle. The abstract instructions are made particular, made material, and empirical. They are reified. However, when reification is taken up as a critical term, when reification is a kind of ideological mistake, the abstract practices or instructions are considered to be identical to the concrete results of their implementation. A set of instructions for repairing a motorcycle, when reified, would become a set of social practices that are repeated without understanding the contextual, practical, or provisional nature of the instructions. A better example than instructions for repairing a motorcycle might be the set of social conventions around love that has emerged based upon practiced beliefs that are now taken to be natural. The ideas that justify monogamy or that ground gender roles are reified when they are no longer understood as a product of our own culture or ideas or practices, our own attempts to cooperate socially, and are instead taken up as natural facts. When we no longer imagine the raising of children or the managing of relationships between the sexes, except through various traditions and practices that are seen as foundational, that are seen as more real than we are, then we are reifying monogamy, or the family, or gender. Reification is when we attribute our ideological practices to nature, when we perceive the forces that we've set loose on the world as objective, as beyond us, as a kind of being rather than something we ourselves are becoming or reproducing. I should give a spoiler alert at this point. What follows will refer to the plot of the film Everything, Everywhere, All at Once in order to illustrate some key concepts from the Frankfurt School philosopher Theodor Adorno. In order to understand the psychological effect of reification and the mood of reification, we should consider the beginning of the film, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Or to be more accurate, we can look to the character Evelyn, the middle-aged owner of a laundromat, who feels harried, dissatisfied, and resentful of her life as the movie begins. She is surrounded on all sides by a life that feels like she's lived the wrong way. Her father has come to visit and judge her. Her lesbian daughter refuses to keep her orientation to herself. Dozens of entitled and eccentric customers overload the washing machines and dryers and treat her with patronizing disdain. And she has a husband whose good and amiable nature borders on the moronic. It's her feeling of being trapped, along with her dissatisfaction, that marks the beginning of the film as a moment where the ideology and its reification are both on the precipice of breaking down. Earlier I mentioned the film Fiddler on the Roof. In that movie, the character Tevye describes how an ideology works through the process of reification. However, Tevye is living traditionally in the Ukraine at a moment when capital and bourgeois life had not yet fully taken hold, whereas Evelyn is living in contemporary San Fernando, California. Her life, like ours, is defined by commodity production and the state. However, both films are explorations of life under modernity, or in the wake of the Enlightenment. In Horkheimer and Adorno's 1947 text, The Dialectic of the Enlightenment, the Frankfurt School philosophers wrote that the Enlightenment, understood in the widest sense as the advance of thought, has always aimed at liberating human beings from fear and installing them as masters. Enlightenment's program was a disenchantment of the world. It wanted to dispel myths, to overthrow fantasy with knowledge. And yet, they add, the wholly enlightened earth is radiant with triumphant calamity. Despite the efforts of Enlightenment philosophers, ideology and reification continue to define our world. The material practice and belief system that is the production of capital is taken to be natural. The struggle for human independence, for the development of human reason, has not yet been won. And it is at this point that we can begin to differentiate between the two Hegels. I mentioned at the outset that there were two approaches to dialectical reason, and that there were two approaches to the development of freedom. Right now, let's take a look at Theodor Adorno. He argued that our ideologies, our concepts, are inherently dialectical, and therefore inherently provide us an opportunity to develop freedom. As Gillian Rose put it in her book, The Melancholy Science, according to Adorno, there are three ways of thinking: identity thinking, non-identity thinking, and rational identity thinking. The first, identity thinking, occurs when we use a concept paradigmatically to pick out those particulars it denotes.
The letter A. The letter A. A, as in artist. Batty is an artist. She loves art.
Our concepts also refer to their objects, and by this Adorno means to the conditions of their ideal existence. This is the utopian aspect of identifying. For the concept to identify its object in this sense, the particular object would have to have all the properties of its ideal state. Adorno calls this condition rational identity. In general, identity thinking, which is our normal mode of thinking, implies that the concept is rationally identical with its object. However, given the present state of society, given the capitalist mode of production and how it dominates us, our concepts cannot be identified with their true objects. When we realize what is lacking in the particular objects that embody our concepts, we participate in non-identity thinking, or what's known as the negative dialectic. Adorno claims that the possibility of thinking differently from our paradigmatic mode of thinking is inherent in that very mode of thinking, especially today, as our concepts include freedom, individuality, and the pursuit of happiness. These concepts already contain the fact that they have no particular objects in the world as it is. To illustrate this idea of non-identity thinking, we can consider what happens to Evelyn in the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, when she is confronted by the IRS agent played by Jamie Lee Curtis. When she is told that all of her incomplete projects, her various hobbies that have never been developed, cannot be counted as business expenses, she is thrown into a crisis. She is confronted by the fact that she herself has no rational identity. She is not identical with her own self-conception. And this realization leads her to do some non-identity thinking. In his 2013 dissertation, Adorno's Marxism, the former president of the Platypus Affiliate Society, Chris Catrone, argued that for Adorno, the fact that the struggle for socialism failed in the 1920s presented us with an opportunity to think the non-identity of Marxism, if only negatively. That is, Adorno saw the failure of Bolshevism, the fact that socialism had not been realized objectively, but had instead become its opposite, as still providing an opportunity to break from the one-dimensional world or the rational identity of the capitalist totality. Far from rejecting Bolshevism, Adorno saw the lack of Bolshevism and the death of socialism as a non-identity that was still present in the identity of mass society and the left. In Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, Evelyn is told that because her life is the worst one possible, because she has failed to reach any aspect of her identity, she has the most potential for radical transformation. She can become anything and has access to everything. For Adorno, the non-identity of Marxism or Bolshevism is not waiting for us. It's not ready-made in some alternative universe or some alternative version of history or timeline, but rather it must be realized. Further, the non-identity of Marxism comes along with the non-identity of liberalism, and the non-identity of liberalism comes along with the non-identity of the Enlightenment. The aim for Adorno is not to create a new concept, but to create the conditions where each of these concepts, Marxism, liberalism, the Enlightenment, can be realized. As Catrone put it in his dissertation, the complex thought presented here is that modern society is in contradiction with itself according to its own avowed principles, and that this contradiction can be overcome only by realizing these principles, not by regressing below them.
Why? Z.
Okay, so this is the end of part 1 on non-identity, contradiction, and Adorno. Next week, we'll challenge Adorno as I cover Zizek's parallax. If you enjoyed this conversation, please do consider supporting us on Patreon. Our patrons help to make sure that Sublation Media can continue to provide interviews, videos, books, and articles that are critical of the left from the left. If you are tired of remaining stuck within bourgeois ideologies and politics, help us sublate them both.